Mate, did we watch a thing this week?
Yeah, we did. Hello, and thank you for joining us here at We Watched a Thing. Another week, another movie. I'm Topher.
I'm Billy.
And for the first time in bloody ages...
I'm Beth.
Has it been like 20 episodes or something, Beth? Well, it's good to have you back, buddy.
Thanks so much. It's lovely to be back.
Back for a movie where, I don't know about you guys, but everyone in my cinema was teary-eyed because it was filled with smoke.
Yes.
People are probably aware Australia's kind of on fire.
Yeah, for those who don't know, Australia is burning. It's burning. We've already lost 5 million hectares of land across all 7 states and 480 million animals, including 1/3 of the total koala population of New South Wales. That's really sad.
The word unprecedented is certainly not unwarranted. It's a profoundly sad time. I think it's relevant for us as Australians, but also for this podcast and listeners of the podcast because we love movies so much. I've been to the cinema 5 times in the last week, partially just in an attempt to get out of the smoke, with, varying degrees of success because obviously the cinemas are filled with smoke as well. But, I think we see cinema as a form both of entertainment and as escape, but those things are both things that aren't available to thousands of people who've been affected and continue to be affected. So if you're a listener and you have either contributed to the fighting the fires or contributed to the recovery and ongoing efforts, we of course extend our deep gratitude and support. And I think Billy has something extra as well to say on that.
Yeah, we'll be putting links in the show notes to places where you can donate, should you choose to do so, to places, directly to fireys who are fucking heroes, as well as to places like the Red Cross Appeal to help support bushfire victims. And for the next month, we'll be donating all Patreon funds to that cause as well. So who knows what the future is, but I feel bad for my kids.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, strange as it is, there are more important things than movies, but stuff that. Let's talk about a movie.
Let's talk about a movie. Let's do that. Let's bring some cheer. What did we watch this week, guys?
Heaps of stuff because it was really hot.
Correct.
We went to the movies a heap.
Genuinely 5. I wasn't kidding.
How many of us here saw Jumanji Next Level? Was it just Beth and
I did not.
No.
I regretted it.
Two days ago when our city had its hottest day ever. It's always been hot though. No such thing as climate change. My other half had gone to bed and I had this fan just blaring at me. And if I was going to have it loud enough that I could hear it, there was no way she was going to be able to sleep. So I was like, okay, I'm forced here into watching something with subtitles because I just need to be able to read this thing. So, I hadn't watched Crouching Tiger in yonks. So, good catch up.
Good movie.
Choice.
Good movie.
Good movie.
But this week, we're not talking about Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. We're talking about Little Women. And not the 1994 Little Women, Greta Gerwig's 2019 Little Women, surprisingly enough.
That would shock you. That would have been a good twist. Just like written by Emma Thompson.
Well, Nona's really great in this, guys.
So, haven't read Little Women, never seen an adaptation.
Oh, you never saw the 90s version?
No.
Oh.
I watched it this very week. I mean, I'd seen it lots, but I was like, you know what? It's been a while. I'm going to catch up on it. It holds up. It's actually a very good movie.
How did you escape that growing up in our household? Our sister and I were watching it constantly.
Yeah, that's probably why. I was like...
Ew, girls.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure that was it.
So, Little Women 2019 is an American coming-of-age period drama film written and directed by Greta Gerwig. It's the 7th film adaptation of 1868 novel of the same name by Louisa May Alcott, and it stars Saoirse Ronan, Emma Watson, Florence Pugh, Eliza Scanlen, Laura Dern, Timothée Chalamet, Tracy Letts, Bob Odenkirk, James Norton, Louis Garrel, Chris Cooper, and Meryl Streep. All right, what's the film about, Toph?
It's about it centers around Joe.
I thought you were going to tell us it was about Little Women, but...
Well, no.
Best planned podcast ever.
The story centers around Joe, one of 4 girls in a New England family during the Civil War.
That's it.
Good stuff.
Nailed it. As you mentioned, Billy, written and directed by Greta Gerwig.
Yeah. We love Greta.
If you're not on Team Greta, fuck off. She was commissioned to write it before she did Lady Bird.
I did not know that.
And
commissioned to write it.
Yeah.
By the studio who owned the rights?
Yeah, they got in contact. I think there'd already been 2 scripts done that they weren't wild about.
Okay.
So Gerwig came in, and I think she initially always wanted to direct it, but she hadn't directed at that point. She was like, there's no way they're going to let me do it. Then Lady Bird happened. All of a sudden, Greta is the new black, and she's like, hey, can I direct this? And they're like, fuck, yes, please.
Also, would you like to cast Saoirse Ronan again?
Yeah.
And
Given what we
Timothée
saw.
Chalamet again.
Of course, yes.
Saoirse came up to Greta and was like, just so you know, I'm going to play Joe. And initially, Greta was like she hadn't been thinking about her and wasn't that sold on her. She was like, all right, okay, well, like, I'll think about it. And then she was like, that was a pretty Joe move.
Yeah.
So, all right, you
Do
can
you
be
know
Joe.
anyone else who was considered for Joe?
I do know that Hermione replaced Emma Stone, who initially was Meg, as Emma Stone replaced Hermione on La La Land.
Right.
Fun fact.
I didn't know either of those facts.
No.
They're both very fun.
We're a fun show.
But now I kind of want to see this movie with Emma Stone in it, I have to say.
See, I think, like, is there too much voltage for the character of Meg with Emma Stone?
I suspect there would be.
Meg, in a lot of ways, she's the least integral character to the film, Meg. Of the 4 Little Women, I'm not saying that she deserves to be edited out. I'm just saying of the 4 Little Women, she is the least main role.
She's the least main role, but she's still important in telling one of the sort of story pathways for women in the 19th century.
The only thing I knew about Little Women going in, really, is that Beth dies.
Oh, everybody knows Beth.
The only,
Anyone who's seen Friends know Beth dies.
do you have to say spoiler alert for a piece of work that's...
I don't think you need to say spoiler
That's as
alert
old as
from a
Little
novel
Women.
from 1868.
Neither do I, but maybe just ruined it for someone. I when it happened, I'm like, okay, I'm not like this is a bummer, but I'm not completely wrecked because I know it's coming.
Yeah.
I did wonder though. I was like, what if I didn't know? Because undoubtedly I'd have been thinking, Joe's taken her to the sea. It's all going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. Nope.
So, going in blind as you did, I just want to start with your initial thoughts, because we had a brief conversation last week where what we'd heard is that for people who weren't familiar with the source material, they may find it confusing, for example. What are your thoughts on the movie?
I really enjoyed it. I didn't find it convoluted or hard to follow. There was one scene, I must say, where it was an Amy scene where I'd been thinking it was a young Amy scene.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until Meryl Streep, Aunt March, said something that I was like, oh, wait, we're here. Because I thought that Pugh just looked very young Amy in the scene.
I know the same scene you're talking about, and that was yes, I think that was the big issue for me. I certainly didn't find it, like you said, convoluted. I personally don't love the framing choice of the non-linear timeline. But, I mean, you can't be like Greta Gerwig and this cast. It's a fun watch.
I quite liked the editing choice. I, again, had been warned about the fact that some people who hadn't seen it before and weren't familiar with the story might be quite perturbed by what was going on and where they were up to in the timeline. But I think it's an interesting choice in that this one, more so I think than the 90s version, is even further into this is Joe's story as opposed to this is
Big
a story
time,
about
definitely.
4 sisters and Joe is the main sister. And I think it was a useful framing device from that perspective. And I feel like you learned more about her having first, you sort of see initial scenes of her and form an initial judgment about her, when she's yelling at Friedrich about why she's made the choices she's made, about the short story she's submitting. And, I think a lot of people watching it might look at particularly a woman behaving like that and saying she's being shrill, she's being, mean, she asked him for his opinion and he's giving it to her, blah, blah, blah. But when you go back, the movie kind of forces you to watch what it took for her to get to that point, and you learn more from watching, how she has to have these daily fights and losses and compromises and sacrifices and what it takes to be a feminist with conviction every single day and why she ended up being at that point. And I think movies are interesting when they sort of, you make a snap judgment about someone or something and then it kind of unravels that as the movie goes on. So I found it quite interesting. I liked it.
Yeah, it's funny. As someone who's read the book and seen the film numerous times, I actually didn't like the choice because I found the opposite of that. I found that even though we are spending more time with these characters and across a greater timeline, I feel like we actually got less development by doing that. So, for example, particularly with the relationships that are formed, I didn't find any of the romances believable at all. I felt there was very little chemistry or development there. Even though, for example, you look at Amy and Laurie, we saw so much of them together in this film as compared to the 94 one where it's randomly like, oh, Amy married Laurie.
Yeah.
And yet somehow I didn't feel them growing together. To me, it felt like it was out of circumstance. I didn't believe their love at all. And it's the same with Jo and Friedrich, which again, I think in this version, that is supposed to be secondary to her love of writing.
Yes.
But it feels very secondary. And I'm glad of the choice they made at the end, to the little kind of meta twist they did there, where you're actually left wondering, so did she marry him or is that just what she's writing?
Yes.
I'm glad they did that, because without that, I would not have believed, like, why would she marry him? There's no relationship between the two of them. We haven't seen anything build between them. So why?
Yeah.
So, I agree with you. I actually really liked that. Did she marry him in the book?
Yeah.
Or did she marry him? I really liked that. Personally, I think he got on the train.
Yeah.
Because just go away.
There's nothing there in this film.
I did like, without having seen another version or read it, I like the framing device and the editing of it, because if I want to see the linear tale of it, I can do that.
Yeah. And that's a great point.
There's no particular, I mean, granted, okay, at this point it has been a quarter of a century, but there's not a raging need necessarily to just make another basically 94 version. Like, if you're going to do it, okay, what are you bringing to it?
Or you could just read the book.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. It's like a cover version of a song. If you're just going to play the song exactly as it was written, what's the point? Make it your own, make it different. And I'll agree 100%. I appreciated that. And Greta Gerwig's direction is beautiful.
Jeez, it's good.
Yeah.
And I was a bit the same as you, Billy. I got to the end and thought, I wasn't convinced necessarily by Jo and Friedrich's relationship. Until then, yes, I thought, actually, it's probably a very intentional choice, in that the relationships are totally secondary to the stories and the characters of these women. I think it was also unfortunate that I'd only just seen Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and if you haven't seen it, dear God, please go and see it.
Jeez, it's good.
Oh, but even very early in that film, before you've had much time with the characters, and you don't have much time with Jo and Friedrich together in Little Women, but in Portrait of a Lady on Fire, the two central characters have established they've established a profound and believable connection very early on. But that movie is a love story, and this is not. So, yeah, I think I was okay at the end with not being convinced. Although I did think the chemistry between both Jo and Laurie, and Amy and Laurie, I was totally convinced by it.
To me, that's the chemistry of the actors. I think Florence Pugh is a revelation. Like, she is amazing in everything she does, and she was the standout in this film for me. And Timothée Chalamet was brilliant. But in the writing of their relationship, I just didn't feel it, particularly between Amy and Laurie, who are supposed to... I know you say it's not a love story, but you only need to look at the 94 one and the novel to go, well, it is a love story. This version of it isn't, and that's cool, and I appreciate that it's different. But to some extent, it's like, well, why spend so much time on that relationship then if I'm not feeling the chemistry build between them?
It's a bit of a cheat casting Timothée Chalamet, because we all want to marry Timothée Chalamet. People who aren't into movies and don't know who Timothée Chalamet is, they still want to marry Timothée Chalamet.
And Florence Pugh. Who doesn't want to marry Florence Pugh? So them two ending up together is like, heck yeah. I thought like butter and bread.
I thought one of the best acted scenes actually in the whole movie was where he says to her, "Don't marry Fred," and she's so mad at him and says, "You are being..." How simple is the dialogue? "You are being mean," but the way she delivers it is so perfect, and the way she, sort of huffs off without this kind of, petulant tantrum, type thing coming through. It's not like that. She is genuinely saying to him, "You are being a dick," I've been in love with you my whole life, and this is the cruelest thing you could possibly do. And the way Florence Pugh acted in that scene, I think, was honestly very, very good.
Am I right in thinking that this is the first time for a lot of people that Amy's been a relatable character?
Yes.
Mostly she was just the brat?
Yes. So definitely in the 90s version. So Topher's and my sister has always been an Amy sympathiser, and she has gotten a lot of shit from people over the years for that. But this movie, I think honestly, in this movie you see Joe and Amy almost being two sides of the same coin. They are equally as passionate. One is they are also equally pragmatic about the things they want, which obviously manifests in different ways. But Amy is totally a revelation in this movie and is portrayed in a much more nuanced and interesting way.
She is, yeah. And I think the issue for me with the scene you're talking about between her and Timothée Chalamet, where she says you're being mean, I didn't feel the point where it came back from that.
Okay.
Like, so when she says I've been in love with you my whole life, for a second there you go, have you? And it's at that point they cut back to a scene of her, cementing her foot,
Brilliant.
That was one of the best scenes.
But my issue, before that, there was no indication that she'd loved him her whole life until she said that line. And you're left there going, really? And then after that, there's no comeback there's no turnaround where you go, oh, okay, they do truly love each other. And then you end up feeling like, okay, she is second best to Joe and he's kind of just going with it and she's decided to go along with it. I never felt the love.
That's so interesting. I felt totally differently. And I also thought him not knowing that she was in love and us not knowing that she was in love with him is also still quite true to life and true to what, people's experiences can be. And so we almost, if you haven't seen it before, we almost learn about her love for him at the same time as he does, which I think is kind of quite interesting.
Really smart and interesting choice because the movie is set over quite a long period of time. It's interesting to see Florence Pugh playing basically a 12-year-old girl, and she does it really, really fucking well.
It's because she's got the bangs.
So it is. It's the bangs. I'm actually still unclear on this. Who's the youngest daughter?
Amy.
Okay. Amy is the youngest. So she's meant to be like 12.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So I think I must have seen something about that after I saw the film, because throughout the entire runtime of the film, and probably because Eliza Scanlen is younger,
so she's supposed to be the
Florence
eldest.
Pugh,
yeah.
I was like, I was just like, Beth's the youngest.
No, so it goes Amy, Beth, Joe,
yeah.
Meg.
But throughout the entire film, I took it as Beth's the youngest.
See, so in the 90s one, they do a really strange thing in that Amy is the only one who is recast, which is really strange. So Amy's character ends up aging like 20 years by the end of the film. And the rest of them are still played by like Winona and Claire Danes, who end up looking far younger than Amy by the end.
Is Kirsten Dunst young?
She's young Amy.
Right.
So she's only Amy for maybe the first 45 minutes of the film. And then there are two other Amys as she ages.
Two others?
Yeah.
Right.
So they age her kind of to middle teen age, and then they age her to adulthood again.
Right.
So, but it was a great choice to just keep the same actresses the whole way. And Florence Pugh pulled it off so well.
She did.
You could tell when she was young Amy and when she was old Amy.
Absolutely.
It was just amazing.
I was listening to something on Godfather Part 2 recently where they talk about how stunning Pacino's work is in the one scene in that film that is set pre-Godfather. And you just like, you look at him once and you're like, that's Michael from Godfather 1. And it's incredible. And Florence Pugh has to do it over and over and over again in this film. And like I said, there was only one time where I didn't know. This just out. Florence Pugh's good.
Yeah. It's some really smart cinematography and blocking choices too. There's often times where like when they're younger, when they're all together, she, for example, will be sitting while the rest are standing. They don't like put her on her knees so that she looks, like
small.
a 12-year-old.
Like forced perspective hobbit her.
But they do some really clever blocking where it's always quite obvious that she is far younger than the rest of them, I think.
Gerwig's direction of the scenes, particularly when they're younger and all together, where she clearly encouraged them, yes, you've all got lines, but do not wait for the last person to finish before you start. You're four sisters under one roof. That's not how it would be.
Yeah.
Just talk the fuck over each other. And it's so good. Like, you line up those four actresses. They don't look like sisters.
No.
But the dynamic between them, you just buy.
Yes. Yeah. Especially, I think, in that plaster foot scene,
Yeah.
which is so, I think, one of the best scenes in the movie.
When Saoirse just loses it, it's the best.
It's so good. And it's very, I think the warmth of the house of the women versus the sort of relative, coldness of the house of the men is very also, I would imagine, quite a deliberate choice. And it's good because that sort of, talking over the top of one another, being, having these sort of raucous scenes, I think is really good because it sort of shows this part again in this book, which I imagine during the 19th century it did when few others were doing, because it sort of gave girls permission to be kind of, silly and dirty and naughty and have jokes and carry about. And this is what it can look like when they're allowed to do that and when people get an insight into that, but it's rarely something that's seen. And I think particularly when Amy has been sort of whipped at school and she's standing outside the window and then gets let in and the guys, Mr. Brooks and whatnot, take care of her. And the girls come over and the whole place is again filled with sort of warmth and laughter and chatter. And as soon as all the girls exit, it's all just quiet and slightly cool or cold again. And I think that like the juxtaposition of the two households I found was quite interesting from a gender perspective.
I actually disagree. I feel like you got that juxtaposition the very first scene you saw that household. You saw the girls having their Christmas breakfast and then you saw the Lawrence house having Christmas breakfast. And at that point, there was a very clear juxtaposition. Mr. Lawrence was quite, like you said, cold, and he was like, maybe you can teach my son some manners. It seemed like it was quite a strict household. After that, everything really loosened up. As soon as Laurie was friends with the Little Women, that house never looked cold again. And I feel like that, for me, didn't quite work because from that point on, he was this lovable old man. He gave Beth the piano almost instantly. You never saw him being cold again after that Christmas breakfast.
Yeah, I don't necessarily mean their characters are cold, but just that the physical environment felt quite hollow. But then I think the whole part of the point, I think, is that once they sort of start to let these women come into their lives, it does become less and less. That's what happens. Their sort of warmth and their light starts to eke into the ecosystem and sort of, fill it up a little bit. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting choice that I think is not reflected so much in the 90s version.
Yeah, definitely not. Yeah.
You mentioned, it was mentioned earlier that the fact that this film leans more on Joe than the family as a whole, particularly with how it decides to frame the film around the kind of make-believe real book.
Yeah.
That makes total sense. There's one section of the film where I think it slightly works against it because it has been operating as this is Joe's story with a really strong and involved supporting cast, as opposed to just a total ensemble piece. There's a section in the film where we kind of lose Joe for a while, and it's probably when there's a lot of Amy and Laurie stuff going on. And I didn't actually think about it that much while it was happening. I wasn't like, where's Joe, where's Joe? But then when we finally came back to Joe, that was when I went, oh, wow, I feel like I've been away from the main character for too long.
Yeah.
It's a minor quibble, but there was this one point in the film where I was like, Joe, who is our through line, I felt like we just lost her for a little bit in the film.
You know who we haven't spoken about casting-wise yet, who I'd really love to, is Laura Dern, because she melted my heart. I cried 4 times in this film. 3 of them are because of Laura Dern.
Yeah, I think the brilliance of Dern is that she's perfectly pictures this sort of, as almost like what I was saying with Meg before, is this other female story that's not central, but still sort of reflects this kind of simmering anger and constriction of what women still feel now, but certainly in the 19th century. And it's not overcooked. It's not ham-fisted because the script and the dialogue is so good, but also because it was given to Laura Dern, who is like a queen amongst women and could just do with it exactly what needed to be done. Yeah,
this will feed into... Because I fully expect that Dern is winning Best Supporting Actress for Marriage Story. Yeah. And going into this, I was like, yes, she's going to get handed an Oscar for Marriage Story, but in brackets, it should say Big Little Lies. Now I'm like, okay, it needs to be expanded to you're winning an Oscar. You're winning an Oscar for 2019.
Yeah.
Because Laura Dern won 2019.
Yeah. Can I bring up the one bit of casting in the film that I did not like in any way?
Oh, I wonder if we'll agree.
Bob Odenkirk.
Oh, no, I didn't care about him.
But that's the problem. You don't care about him.
I think that's the point, though. You're not meant to care about
Why
him.
Bob Odenkirk then? Because why have Saul up there who is so eye-catching and your mind is drawn to him when he just sits in the background? Like, why? It didn't work for me at all. He was distracting.
So I'd heard this from someone else, that Bob Odenkirk came in and they were just like, oh, wow, Bob Odenkirk's here. So I was expecting it to happen, and then he rolled in and I was like, no, I'm into Mr. March.
Really?
Yeah, I really liked him.
I just found him distracting.
Maybe that's part of the point. Like, you've got Bob Odenkirk, and you're like, this is who we got. But actually, not about you, old white dude. Come sit in the corner and shut up.
So who's yours then?
Mine, in book one, Harry would have died without Hermione, as we know. So, look, I don't have a problem. I really like Emma Watson. She is older. She's like 4 or 5 years older than Saoirse Ronan in real life. I didn't buy that she was older, and that became a slight, and particularly because she's the only one as well without blonde hair. The fact that the age didn't quite work, and something about the visual also slightly set her apart from the other sisters. Something about, I mean, it was fine, but I was distracted by the fact that I couldn't see the link.
Yeah, I don't know if this bothered anyone else too, but she was also the only one whose accent slipped a couple of times. Like, Saoirse is a gun.
Oh, there was one scene where Saoirse was
Really?
Irish. like genuinely. I mean, I know you're from New England.
But with Emma Watson, it happened a couple of times for me, and yeah, I just don't think she's that strong an actress.
I really liked Emma Watson in it.
Right. So did my wife.
I mean, I really liked everyone.
Yes.
Like, they just casted the shit out of this film.
We haven't even spoken about Meryl Streep. Meryl Streep. We haven't even spoken about her. That's how good the casting is. You're not even immediately thinking about Meryl Streep.
Guys, I'm going to be...
Billy,
no,
What are you doing?
Please. I'm going to be the contrarian here.
Just think about... I want you to think about what you're about to say, Billy.
Meryl is an amazing actress and has been amazing in the past.
Famously.
What I have seen her in the last number of years, this included, I'm not the biggest fan. The last thing I saw her in before this was Mary Poppins Returns, which I didn't like. I also was not the hugest fan of this. I warmed to her, but Meryl is really young at heart still, and I don't think she naturally plays very well this old, stern lady.
I am loving old stern Meryl.
It just didn't land for me because she's too naturally warm, and I didn't buy that she was this codgety old mean lady. It just didn't work for me.
The point specifically where she was saying that Laura Dern, she was like, you have no idea. You know,
I think she's having fun
what it is
doing
for your
it.
mother to live. Oh God.
I think she's having fun doing it, and that comes across to me. I feel like she's enjoying herself playing this role, but I didn't find it believable.
Billy hates Meryl Streep. That's going on the website.
That's what I heard. See, I think people, this is a massive generalization, not at you, Billy. I think there is a bit of a thing at the moment of that we might be taking Meryl for granted. Like, I remember when she was nominated for The Post, and we were like, oh, okay, of course you've got to nominate Meryl.
I didn't see The Post.
I was like, if you watched The Post and were paying any attention, you have to nominate Meryl. Because even if it's not like one of her top 5 performances, Meryl's 50th best performance is still one of the 5 best performances of a given year.
Can we talk about the score by Desplat? I don't think it's Desplat's strongest.
Nope.
No,
to me, it's a little bit like when
a high bar. That's a high bar.
Yeah. To me, it's a little bit like when Hans Zimmer did The Holiday, where it's like, okay, sure, we've got Hans Zimmer here, but it's kind of just your standard Hallmark movie soundtrack. It didn't lift to anything new to me, which is disappointing because I love Desplat.
Yeah, and I am gonna go on a bit of a tangent here. Okay, Saoirse Ronan did get nominated for the Globes for whatever best actress. He is the only other person who got nominated, I think, for the movie. So he has been nominated for best score.
That's wrong.
For a score that is, in my opinion, largely forgettable. And it's interesting that it has happened for a movie that really is about the fact that women have to conform to this sort of male set standard for what's interesting and, you know, what is perfect to be valid and to be heard, particularly if you're creative. You know, Joe's a writer, Amy's a painter, Beth's the pianist, Meg's the actress. And yet, in this sort of weird meta replication, the Hollywood has been the fat idiot sitting behind the publisher's desk saying to Joe, you can't do this. And the Globes have just fantastically taken on.
It is the Globes.
It's the Globes. But the movies that got nominated in the sort of category, that this movie would have been nominated for are all directed by men, with the exception of Marriage Story. They all focus wholly on the stories of men, and it's just this. I mean, it would be funny if it weren't so fucking frustrating, but when I got to the fact that he had been nominated for score, I was like, sorry, this is it's not for me. It's not deserved, and the fact that it is granted in a year in which Gerwig has not been recognised by the Globes in this case is fanciful and disgusting.
There were alarm bells going off when they do screenings for people who are from bodies such as the Academy, just general voting bodies. And as much as the Academy, for instance, is shifting to the, hashtag New Academy, that's still a long way off really happening. The biggest voting block in any of these organisations is old white dudes. And in the screenings that were being put on in December for Little Women, where the invitees, the clear majority is men, the audiences that showed up were 2-to-1 women. So even before nominations had been announced for a lot of awards, people were like, I think we know where this is going.
I saw that, about basically the profound lack of women, particularly represented at award ceremonies, that Paramount has not produced a female-led movie in the past 5 years.
Wow.
And they that's in a time period in which they made Transformers The Last Night. This is the threshold, apparently, women cannot reach. Anyway, back to Billy's point, the score, forgettable.
It's entirely forgettable.
I thought about you, actually.
Yeah, it just didn't really do anything for me at all. It just felt bland and comfortable and like a Hallmark movie. Like, there's no need for Desplat to have done this. This could have been done by Topher. It didn't even sound like a live orchestra to me. It sounded very synthed, which I think is the wrong choice, but just didn't do it for me.
Can I just say I'm happy that I never had to go to the beach dressed like I was going to high tea. That's not how you do it.
You've never had to go to the beach in your knickerbockers, mate?
They're doing it wrong.
Speaking of the beach, though, one of I think the most beautiful shots from the movie is on the beach. So what were your feelings about the cinematography?
It does a great job of just infusing the image with the warmth of the family. Particularly like in those scenes in the house, the look of the film, I think, really just perfectly reflects the tone that Gerwig's going for. I heard an interview with Gerwig recently where she was talking about scenes that they were shooting that were in spring. They're meant to be in spring, but they're filming in winter. And I'm fairly certain they were filming in New England. And so she's just yelling out to the cast, all right, get rid of those layers. It's spring, y'all. It's just like the way she said it. I was just like, could you want more badly than want to be friends with Greta Gerwig?
And isn't she with Noah Baumbach? Like, the two of them are just disgusting celebrity crush.
She was there for all of the making of Marriage Story, and he was there for all of the making of Little Women. The whole year was just Gerwig, Baumbach, and Laura Dern. just winning at 2019.
I want to be their friends so badly.
Guys, if I'm ever dying, don't take me to the beach. Because sand is coarse and it gets everywhere.
And when I was watching that scene, I was like, I think that was shot in winter. It looked like it. Yeah, I was looking at...
that was so clearly winter.
At Saoirse and Scanlen, just going, I think you really want to have more layers on than you do.
Well, that's the thing. She's meant to have scarlet fever. She's meant to be burning up, and she looked freezing. Poor girl.
That was one of my favourite shots, actually, where Joe says to her, I'll push back the tide and I will stop it. I stopped it once before. I think that was the first time I cried, Billy. But then there's just a still shot of the two of them sitting on the beach, sort of embracing, and it just lingers on them for the perfect period of time. And geez, it was a beautiful shot. You could just frame it.
So how are we scoring this, guys? Toph, Beth?
9 out of 10.
It's very high.
It's also incredibly hard for me. Like, people think Topher's a Grinch about ratings. It runs in the family. If you scroll through my IMDb ratings, the 9s are very few and far between.
I've been back and forth between a 7 and an 8. since I saw it? Like, did I really like it, or did I think it was really genuinely quite something into that 8 category?
He's going to go with 7, guys. I could see it on his face.
Yeah, right, I'll go with 7.
Yeah.
Really, I swear to God, if you rate this lower than John Carter, I'm never coming back.
I much like Toph was between, but I was between a 6 and a 7. I've landed on a 7. But to me, the thing about this film is there are moments of it that work so well. The cast is brilliant. Like, brilliant is the only word for it. The direction is brilliant. There are moments of dialogue that are brilliant, but to me, the dialogue is far better than the screenplay. I don't like the structure. I think there are things that fall down. And while there are some really beautiful lines and stuff like we've mentioned, overall, I don't think it is that strong.
I've remembered what my deciding factor was. It was because 2 days before I saw Little Women, I saw Portrait of a Lady on Fire and was deciding between an 8 and a 9.
Yes.
And fell on an 8.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I don't know if this week I can give these two films, because I like Portrait of a Lady on Fire more. I think it's really very good.
Here's the thing, I probably won't rush to watch this again. And even if I was in the mood for Little Women, I think I would probably watch the 94 before this again. You know, so I can't go higher than a 7. I think it's great, and I'd recommend it.
You don't think it's great?
I'd recommend it, but it's, you know.
Let's be clear, we're standing in a room with 3 people who are positive on the film.
And like my 7, like for you, 7 is a great score. So
it is. Yes. It's very high above average.
It's a significantly above average film. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
All right. Cool. Good fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
Well, thank God we can get back to dad movies next week.
What are we watching next week?
1917.
Yes, we are. I'm curious to see this. Where do you think it's going? Did you see the reports come out that the scores are as high as Saving Private Ryan?
Well, I'm not surprised, because 3/4 of Saving Private Ryan is merely good.
Well, can I make a confession? I haven't seen Saving Private Ryan.
I'd love to be shocked.
I've seen the opening scene. I haven't seen the movie.
The opening scene, yeah, that's like 40 minutes
I know, that's what I mean. It's too long. Why am I going to watch the whole thing? I'm not expecting to like 1917 because I don't like war movies. I don't like movies about...
This does not seem like your film then.
I'm not expecting to like it. I've liked very few. I liked Hacksaw Ridge. And that
Hacksaw Ridge was so average.
It's barely a war movie. It's a personal story, and that's the kind of thing I like. So I'm really curious to see. I'm expecting the cinematography to be amazing.
Well, that's like the absolute worst that 1917 can be is just sitting there for 2 hours going, wow.
Oh, it's not
just looking at it.
Long,
I don't know how long it is.
I also got to see The Gentleman, which was really fun if you're into Ritchie movies. Always a fun time in a cinema.
Would we say return to form?
What was his last one again?
Well, they've mostly been crap lately.
Wasn't his last one some absolute train wreck of a King Arthur type thing?
Yeah, last one he did was King Arthur, and he's also done the Sherlock Holmeses lately, which
were okay.
Yeah, they were fine,
but they're not like Lock, Stock, or Snatch.
No, I mean it's very fun.
I watched both Lock, Stock, and Snatch in the past 12 months. Look, totally enjoyable.
Not as good as
they're not as good as we remember them.
Yeah.
Like there's still a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
But they're not like.
Yeah, there are editing problems, I think, and there's bits of the storyline that are, there are parts of the storyline that were flawed, shall we say, and I think there were things that should have been edited out, but it was funny. I laughed a lot. People say cunt with lots of enthusiasm. So, why not? Get along. Colin Farrell wears a, matching velour suit, so...
So thank you very much for listening. Again, I'll put links in the show notes for places that you can donate. And in the meantime, if you want to get in touch with us, you can do that at wewatchedathing.com or wewatchedathing@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all under the handle @wewatchedathing. And if you want to help support the show, you can make us watch something. You can get early access to episodes, bonus content, all that kind of stuff. You can do that at patreon.com/wewatchedathing.
Speaking of making us watch stuff.
Oh, shitty, how competition winners.
Yeah. That Daniel guy from the Movie Journey podcast, he's making us watch something, isn't he?
He is. He sent us he decided to send his in as an audio clip.
He's a podcaster.
Are we ready for this?
Yeah.
I'm really worried that I know what it is.
Okay. I legitimately have not listened to this. I don't know what's coming.
I'm worried we're going to have to go see
We
Cats,
might
mate.
make Beth watch it as well if it's really bad.
If it's Cats, you have to come. If it's Cats, you have to come.
I'll get drunk before then.
Right, let's listen.
G'day, B-Dizzle and Toph. It's Hendo here from the Movie Journey podcast. First off, a big pat on the back to myself for winning the random draw competition. It was all skill, no luck required whatsoever. Second of all, big thank you to the both of you guys for the awesome show you put on every week. Even though you criminally underrate a lot of my personal favourites, I'd still love to hear your thoughts week in and week out. Meow, I have a movie to pick for you to review on a future episode, and my first thought was, Meow, what film is going to get the boys to throw the biggest hissy fit at? Which one has the biggest chance of them pussing out, of basically coughing up a hairball in disgust and wasting their 9 lives on? And one film came to mind. You knew it. You were dreading it. It's Cats. What a riveting review that would be. But then I realised that's too obvious.
Oh.
I don't want to waste this one opportunity on a film I'm pretty sure I know what your thoughts will be on. So I decided not to choose that. I know what you're thinking, and you're welcome. Now, for my actual choice, one thing I like to throw at Dean sometimes is the occasional obscure foreign film. And that's where I'm leaning for you guys as well. So I've gone with the Thai film from 2017 called Bad Genius. Hopefully you haven't seen it yet, and hopefully you bloody love it like I do. Cheers, guys, and thanks again.
I know nothing about Bad Genius.
I've never heard of it, but it's on the schedule. I mean, it has to be. We won a competition.
Yep.
That's the rules.
That's how it works.
All right. Well, I guess look forward to that in the coming weeks. Thanks for that, Hendo. And you should definitely check out the Movie Journey podcast as well if you haven't already. All right. Catch you next week.
That's us done. Go watch a movie.
Bye. Not that menstruation is anything to be ashamed of. And you can put that in as post-credit if you want.